up, our little honeydews, and welcome back to Sippin N B, where the drinks are icy and the book talk is spicy and traumatic. We are on episode 9 still, part 14. We're your main bitches. I am Sam.
And I am Steph. I have to say, I didn't think you were going to do that in one take, respectfully.
Rude. No trust. No confidence. I understand, though.
None at all, to be honest, but we're back. We're back from our well, there's no break really for y'all unless you follow us on social media. Then there was a slight break, but like not really. So, but we're back.
We
That's
took a
besides
break.
the point. We took a break because we batched before vacation, which is the thing you need to do when you want to be a wilderness explorer. Has nothing to do with being a wilderness explorer. I'm tired.
We're in post-vacation depression era still, so
much so that I've booked my next one.
Of course you have.
Sort of. Sort of. Yeah, so part 14, we only have 2 more episodes for this book after this episode.
There is an end in sight.
There is an end,
until the
and
next
technically the last episode really is only 2 chapters, because then we're getting into epilogues, which is setting up our next conversation for the next book that doesn't come out till next June, and then we'll have not only post-vacation depression, but post-book talk
post-boba depression.
Yeah. Wow. Now let's not dwell on that. We still got 2 more episodes.
I'm depressed again.
As we do every episode, I'm going to read the note to the reader, and then we will dive right in. Today we're going to cover chapters 56 to chapter 59. This book contains themes and or discussions that some readers may find difficult to read. While there are no graphic scenes, there is mention of sexual assault, suicide, the death of children, and discussions of verbal, psychological, and physical abuse. If you need to talk with somebody about your experiences, there are people waiting to help, and the resources are provided for you in the description down below, or in the blurb thing. Well, I guess it's still a description. It's either in the description of the YouTube or in the episode description, and it should all be clickable, so click it or tick it.
Hey, that was good job.
That's a thing. Click it or tick it.
No, I know it's a thing. I know.
Put on
it's
your seatbelts. Buckle up.
That was just a ride. Stand back from the doors. Oh, yes, we are starting on chapter 56. We left off on a very high note of Vessus's death.
I mean, did you want us to cry about it? Let's be real, y'all. Were we expected to cry?
I get why Sarah feels bad. I get it.
But no.
But at the same time, I'm just glad she's gone out of the way. She was really annoying. She was not furthering the plot. Anyways. So that's where this takes off, is after Vessus has dead.
Listen, the flub was gonna be somewhere, and it wasn't in the intro, so it decided to flub your brain. I'm just saying.
I'm gonna flub a lot, guys. That's the post-depression. Anyways. Yeah, so the Wicked Witch is dead. And they're kind of like... They just took over the city, I guess? Lack of a better term, is it city? Her area that she was over. I don't know like what to call her court. Yeah, sure.
Technically, it's her court in a city. Yes.
Yeah, sure. They're taking over where she ruled, and like a lot of people were like, "Oh, we'll pledge our loyalty to you," but you know, it wasn't their loyalty they wanted. We wanted their promise to change the way that they had lived under Vessa's rule, and well, change is not easy. So a lot of people didn't make it. But not only that, they found a really depressing site. They found a bunch of mass graves. And to these people, that is a big... It's a sign of disrespect and like disgrace. Because normally when a god or a human or someone dies, they burn the body, as we know, having seen a few of those in these books. And these were people that they were like, nah. There's this girl, Tindra, or goddess Tindra, who is helping them out, and she had said that the grave sites likely contained hundreds of bodies, which meant there were thousands of decaying corpses between the 6 sites. thousands, and Ash had asked why they were not given a proper burial rite. Tindra explained that Vessus never performed burial rites for those executed, and the crimes committed that were so deserving of capital punishment, it ranged from refusing to carry out an order to actual murder and everything in between. But it wasn't just the so-called criminals whose final resting place was so disgraceful. Victims who had lost their lives over a quarrel or at the hands of a jealous lover had been routinely tossed into these pits as well. So if that gives you another reason to hate her. Giving, I'm not going to say what's giving. Never mind. That's a dark thought. Sarah's very disgusted by all of this. And Tindra even says that many were disgusted, at least in the beginning, but this is how many have lived for so long. Die or survive by any means necessary is the only way they knew. And she's thinking about Rain and why he refuses to claim any claims to the court. Like, he didn't want to be associated with that at all, and I don't blame him. Don't blame him at all. And was it on this page they said, or the next page? No, the next page. So I'll continue. And Elias makes a reappearance. He shows up with Addis, little Elias. He does our favorite thing and bows to our queen. And she's just like, oh, you don't need to bow. And he's just like, it's just a habit. And then he starts to call her Mieliesa. And she's like, Sarah, it's just Sarah. And then he sees the grave sites and she asks him to help gather all the bodies and give them proper burial rites, which I respect and love that. And he's making note of how Tindra is still out there, and we find out that her husband is in one of those grave sites, and he's been out there for decades. So hopefully she gets some peace knowing he's going to get his burial rites, because that's just sad. This is all just sad. And she even makes note of how she knows this is probably not going to be the only court that has this, and Elias informs her there are 3 times this many on the outskirts of Deos. Fucking Colas. That's all I gotta say about that is fucking Colas. But Ash and Addis arrive. They found some more bones. That was my sound effects for stabbing with a bone. In case
that was a choice.
That was a choice.
The hand motion.
It's spooky season.
Helps. Yes, but it's spooky season. But this is coming out after spooky season is over, honey.
Yeah, so I'm always in spooky season though.
Oh, okay.
Always.
Okay.
Okay. I'm thinking of just keeping my skeleton out and putting like a Christmas hat on him.
I had a tape head that I just put a elf hat on.
See, there we go.
It's gotten dented over the years, and it's fine.
It's fine. But anyways, they found some more bones. In between the ones they found there and in Penelope's, and in Lotho that Penelope found, it's not nearly enough to keep Cola secured, but they got more quartz they're gonna go searching for. But then Ash and Sarah return back to their home, and they are kind of just in their chambers, not really feeling like being around people because they're espresso depresso from what they just saw. But it's they're eating food, and she says, I watched Ash as he rooted through the bowl of sliced fruit, inspecting a strawberry before moving on to another until he found the plumpest one to offer me. He'd done the same with the melon, the chicken, and the vegetables. And we love a sweet king. But she was just like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And he's like, I just want to make sure you have the best there is to offer. And it's just so cute. So cute. But they are now laying down in bed. If any of you got the book, the pre-order with the pictures, I'm pretty sure this is where the cover art comes in, where they're laying in bed and his hand is over her stomach. I'm pretty sure that's what Yeah, that's what the art is depicting, I'm pretty sure. I got my book. If you are watching this, you can see it.
Oh, the bookmark. Oh yeah, I have that somewhere.
I
Couldn't tell
have
you
the
where I
big
put it.
picture too, but my kids have crumpled it, so I didn't want to pull it down.
Oh yeah, that bookmark is still sitting on my desk. I don't really use bookmarks because I don't really read physical books anymore. Whatever, it's fine.
I don't use the bookmarks I get with these things because I want to keep them nice, so I use like pieces of paper and stuff as bookmarks when I read physical books.
Metal, like clippy ones
Oh, that's cute.
that I got gifted, and then I got my cock mark, but I
Oh,
use my
that's
cock
true.
mark typically, so.
Yeah. Stick the tip out, like it. But they're supposed to be sleeping, and he knows she's not sleeping, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. And they're talking kind of about what happened today and the Draken, and he's like, I get that, but that's not really, you're like not worried about the Draken, that's not what's going on. And she's like, no, I'm thinking about like with Vestas and everything. And he was like, oh, what did I tell you? And she said not to leave a mark, but then she says, I want them to leave a mark. I need them to. I can kind of get that. Like, you want to be able to know your emotions are there, like you still feel it. Like, because I feel like if you don't let that stuff leave a mark, you kind of lose a part of yourself in a way. But anyways, he's asking why she feels that way, and she's saying how like she doesn't regret what they did, and she knows it's what needed to be done. But she keeps seeing Vesis's face, and she says, deep down, Vesis really didn't think that we were basically going to kill her. She thought that we were better than that. And they're saying that she thought they'd be like Ethos, and they're not. And he says, you're upset. She says, you're reading my emotions. He says, you're projecting. I love that little banter. But they're talking about her. She's like, I don't know why. I hate Vestas for what she did to you and for how she ran her court. Still do, even though she's dead. And I don't regret ending her. It had to happen. But she wasn't always like that. You said it yourself. And he was like, yeah, neither was Empress. And she's like, Vestas is different. And he says, why is that? And she says, because she said it was nothing. She said how Colas treated her and the things he made her do was nothing. It wasn't nothing. God's knows. I knew every time I said that what he had done to me wasn't nothing. And I know Vestas knew that too. But she loved him. And maybe that was what turned her into what she had ended up being. Always loving someone who loves someone else. I don't know. And she starts to say that she can see herself in her, and he's trying to tell her that there's nothing of herself in Vestas. And she says, I can see a part of me in her. Not the part that made her such a bitch, but the pain in her eyes. I saw it while in Deos. She tried to hide it, but she did this, all of it, to herself. And then she continues to think that if I continued as if all of it that happened to me was nothing, I could have ended up like her. Maybe not as bad, perhaps even worse, but in a different way. Because that kind of pain and shame, that kind of heartbreak rotted you from the inside. It destroyed the glimpse of who you once were, and perhaps that was why her death bothered me. Because I could have done it to myself. Killing her was like killing that one part of me that had reluctantly connected to her. And so she had a little like moment of truth and realizing the importance of kind of forgiving yourself and moving on and recognizing that stuff. And they go to sleep until she is woken before dawn, gasping for air as a shout of fury slammed around in her head. She felt the cord, the connection that signaled the balance being righted once more. Even with her eyes open, she could see the darkness descending, black streaked with crimson. Colas was awake. We love that. Love that.
We don't, but
Yeah.
we get
Fast
into
forward. Scion has now been ascended. They ascended him in case Thanos decided not to
that. Cooperate?
cooperate. Yeah, in case he decided to join Colas in the end. And so they have Scion ready as a backup plan in case they gotta kill a god, kill a primal. Yeah. And poor Scion is going through an ordeal, and he has Reaver who's been growling at him, and Ash, who's been glaring and growling as well. And Scion's just like, why is everyone growling at me today? Because Reaver doesn't know, but we think he's picking up on Ash's tension, and so it's just poor Scion. He didn't ask for any of this. He's just getting it from both ends right now. Scion's like, I feel I need to apologize because he can't figure out what's going on, and Sarah says he's just cranky, and Ash is like, cranky? That's great. It's a great time. We love a protective husband. But they're saying that they need to prepare for going to the Triton Isles because they need to go speak with Thanos and kind of basically, I think, give him an ultimatum finally. And they know that Colus being awake, he would have felt that, and so they need to work fast. I love this part so much. So they go to the Triton Isles. They Ash grabs her and he says, careful, you're about to step on a Lamea. Lamea, I'm gonna say Lamea, whatever. And she looks down and says, the pale gray creature wiggled and slid across the sand. The fleshy smack of its flopping fins and slippery slide of its dragging tails could fill a bucket of nightmares. I was so shocked at the sight of it, I couldn't even concentrate enough to allow my Videntia to tell me what I was looking at. So we've heard of this creature before. We've heard about it in A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire from our lovely Castile and Kieran. Telling Poppy, I wrote down, I copy and paste an excerpt where they talk about it. They say it's a creature with fins for legs and tails for arms that hide under the beds of children, waiting until the lights are turned off. In the dark, it makes its way out from under the bed to then suck the life from them. And then they're like, it's not real, or at least I've never seen one, but as a small child, both my brother and I fought to keep the lights on at night. So this is a creature that to Atlanteans is like a horror story. But then we meet it here, and she's saying, no offense, but your father really need to stop trying. Because it was a creation of ethos, and they're like, none taken. And then he says they're harmless. And she says, is it waving at us? So here's this creature of nightmares to Atlanteans. But then we find out that they're actually harmless, and they're just these like little slime fishball things, and like he's like waving at them. And it's just, I laughed so hard when I first read this in the book. So freaking hard. Jennifer's really out there doing the best for us sometimes. But then Nectus is cursing because he stepped in Lamea slime. And Sarah's like, I just don't need to be thinking about gooey stuff right now. And he says, you and me both. But they get to the court, and it's a little sus. Because, first off, there's no rise, which is unusual because Thanos didn't want the ocean view being obstructed. But then they realize that he isn't there, and no one is there. They're wondering if they could be on another island, but there's not even guards there. And that's when Sarah's feeling that something's not right. And even Nectus is saying he doesn't like this. And she looks over at where the ship should be, and there's no ships. And we find out he has like 200 ships. So they're all just gone. And so they're trying to figure out where he could go. They're asking Hectus to go be on a lookout, and he's like, I don't want to leave you here. And they're like, we're not staying. We got to go see if they're heading to the Shadowlands, get word to Theon to be on the lookout. So Nectus takes off, and then Sarah has this like sudden like stabbing pain. Like she feels like that an icy cold sensation shot down her spine and spread through her limbs. And she says, my stomach just keeps dipping, like something is gravely wrong. Not here, but I'm sensing unrest in Elysium. And he's like, can you tell if it's in the Shadowlands or where it's coming from? And she's like, if I focus, I can take us to it. And so they go to where she's feeling this unrest. And it says, I summoned the ether and felt the Triton Isle slip away from us. The next breath I took filled my lungs with the scent of scorched earth and the metallic tang of blood as Ash and I shadow stepped smack dab into the middle of a battle. Vathy. She immediately knew what they were seeing, what had happened. Kin had launched an attack against his brother.
Yeah, I don't.
So yeah, shit be hitting the fan hard in this next chapter. It says, I spun, taking the carnage. Everywhere I looked, gods dressed in black, others in crimson, were locked in a fierce battle, striking down one another with an instinctual grace that almost hid their innate brutality. The shimmering waves of energy arced and crackled across the field as sword blows gave way to deadly strikes of ether. Charging fearlessly into battle, every swing of their swords and motion was a testament to the primal gods they descended from, the primal god of war and accord, and the primal god of peace and vengeance. So yeah, there's a lot going on, a lot of fighting that they're smack dab in the middle of. And Ash grabs Sarah and pulls her out of the way of danger, and he starts to say her name, and she's immediately like, I'm not leaving, I'm fighting beside you. I remember what I promised, no unnecessary risks. And he tells her, I'd better not see a single scratch on you, Liesa, not even one, so be the badass queen you are. We love a man who lets his woman fight, even when he's terrified of her fighting. But they're saying we need to get to Addis before he falls. We gotta save Addie boy. We love him too much. And the soldiers notice that she's there and say the bitch is on the field. So that's very sweet of them. And Ash is shooting ether at people, and he ended up killing the rider and the horse, and she yells, not the horse! And he tells her to get ready, and he shoots tendrils of shadows at other people, but doesn't take out the horses. The horses just don't have riders anymore. So he's so supportive, even in the midst of battle. But she says that Kin and Addis were on a hill. They're locked in battle. And so she's taken off for a run to try to get there. And she's, running through the midst of battle. Things are flying everywhere. She sees I don't know who she sees, but she sees someone that she knows. And she's like, the soldier that she sees is like, Mie Liesa. She's like, hi, please don't bow, and just keeps running. And then Ethan is here. He's up in the sky, blowing fire on the baddies. Listen, she even puts his name in italics. Like, she's asking for me to say it funny, okay?
I just mean I know where this goes, so I just shaking my head.
Shut up. Anyways, but Ash joins her again, and they start fighting together. It says, he and I searched forward, but it was different than before when I slipped away into battle. There was a pattern to how we moved, almost as if we were one. In the back of my mind, it made sense. We are two halves of the same whole, our movements nearly synchronized, punctured by the thrust of my sword and the arc of his. But I knew there was a difference as I met fierce blow with the same strength and lashed out with the essence. When I fought before, I could always let go of my fear. I couldn't this time. Each swing and thrust was tinged with bitter emotion. I wasn't scared for myself or even Ash. I worried about the babes I carried inside me. The fear didn't make me a worse fighter. It made me a far deadlier one. Love that. But there's death everywhere. And she suddenly has this wrenching sensation in the center of her chest. And she described it more of a dull ache, but not a physical one, more like a loss. And she'd felt this before with Keela when she died. And she tells Ash that Maya has fallen in battle. So Maya be gone.
Rip. Pour one
Rip.
out to the homie. It's not as, okay, honestly, not as tragic as, like, Keela choosing to go. That, I think, is the most impactful, just because, like, she was, like, an OG of this whole situation, and she's just like, it's my time. I can't pledge my allegiance to the flag, and I gotta go. That's not quite how that went, but whatever. You know what I meant.
Between me with we the people of the United States to make sure my camera's working, and you with a pledge allegiance to the flag. We're real patriotic today. Um. So yeah, Maya's fallen. Big ripper dipper. We're sad, but shit continues on. They're in the middle of the fight. Gotta keep going. And there's a crack of power. She sees that Addis is once more on his feet, fighting his brother still. Kin and Addis's forms are bullers of motion as they're fighting. Look, they're good fighters, and this is really kind of a depressing scene. And that's why she's trying so hard to get to them. She doesn't want Addis to be the one to end her brother's life. But really, I feel like he wouldn't want it any other way. Like, if someone's going to take him out, it's going to be him. Like, that's how I would feel too. So, but they're working hard to get there. And Addis is taking his brother down. And she's trying to yell at him not to do it. But he grabs his brother by the throat and shouts to Sarah, Layla, ascend Layla, Sarah, now. Because he knows that he's about to kill his brother and they don't have someone to take his place. So they kind of need her to hurry up and do that. So that way the repercussions aren't felt too hard. Because we have learned what happens if you kill a primal and there's not someone there to take its spot. But Ash tells her that she needs to go, that Layla's on the rise by the Black Bay. And she asks Ash to stay with Addis. And they say their love yous, and she starts to shadow step. And it says, I stepped back as lightning erupted from the dark clouds overhead. A gold and silver mist rose around me. Addis turned back to his brother. The last thing I heard before I appeared on the rise was Addis screaming, and he sounded just as I had when I found my family impaled on the walls of Wayfair. His scream was that of a wild, broken animal full of sorrow and rage.
I would pour one out, but I hated Kin. So we'll pour one out for Atties.
Yeah, pour one out for Addis, because that's who we feel bad for.
Yeah, truly. Like, I don't...
He knew a Kin that we didn't, so we can hate the Kin we know. He's mourning the Kin that he grew up with.
Yeah. Anyway, chapter 58. So the battle's over. This is a little bit of it's not much of a time jump. It's just like the battle's over. And Ash is gone. Sarah assumes that he's at the pillars since the fight because, well, death be deathin'. That's all I got to say about that.
Death be deathin'.
It wasn't as bad, but it was after Empress, but it was still pretty bad. On the way to Ash after feeling his return, she stops by Aos's chambers, where Rain is watching over her. I love how protective Rain is. I also think that in terms of Vestis's court, Rain just didn't want the responsibility of it. It's one of those, well, this is what I attributed it. It's like he enjoys, I don't want to say cleaning up other people's messes, but he likes the choice of choosing his loyalty, and I feel like if he chose to go over Vestis court, it's like he's cleaning up her mess, which is not something fuck her, respectfully fuck
right
her. And Rain was just telling Sarah that he didn't know what was happening until Aos lit up with ether, then he knew. Yeah,
that would do it.
She's just like, I didn't know Maya well, but I wish. And Rain was just like, there's nothing you guys could have done, because she's always trying to take the blame. And he says it wasn't like preparing Scion triggered Thanos into making his choice. There was no way he could have readied his armies and left the Triton Isles in that little time. And Sarah's just like, I know, but she also knew that Keela's and Vestis' death, although for vastly different reasons, could have influenced what Thanos decided. And honestly, this is where, in terms of the writing, I'm just like, well, we could have had something different here with Thanos, but I don't like. I mean, it's fine. It's part of the journey that we're going on. But yeesh. Rain was just like, Maya didn't have a huge army. Her forces would have been taken over quickly, quickly overwhelmed. And so Sarah just comes to this internal realization. She's just like, it felt like we were at war, even though it hadn't officially been declared. And honestly, the logic in that is kind of like you are in a war.
I feel like I'm not sure declared real well when he attacked your family.
I just I don't. I don't know. It's fine.
Do we
Whatever.
need an official declaration with the shit that's
Like, what does
happened,
that look
really?
like? Does Rain summon everyone and say, "Hello, we are now in war"?
Do you go out and shout it to the sky? Like, I think
Like,
him attacking her family, and
lights and
then all of a sudden the
torches?
primal's like, we're at war, honey. Like, we're at
Yeah, I
war.
don't know. So they've taken over Lotho, Serta, the Calasta? We're going with Calasta Isles, the entirety of Vathi, and Kithria, once it's secure, will be under their control. And then, but we lost a lot of Maya and Vestas and Kin soldiers, so rip, bird, dipper, skipper. So then Rain asks how Addie's is, and she's just like, I only saw him briefly, but I imagine not good. And she's like, I didn't want it to be him. And Rain's like, I don't think Atis would have allowed it to be anyone but him, which is true. Just knowing how we know these characters, which I have to say, like, I think in the moment of reading this, I don't really think about the character development, but upon rereading and like reflecting and discussing it, the character development is very like uh intriguing and well executed because Atis comes in like this huge flirt that like I mean, I didn't take him seriously at first, and now that like it's progressed throughout the books, I'm just like, huh, what a gem of a human. I don't
He
know.
kind of
That's just me.
hides behind that flirtation, and you're kind of like, oh, I don't trust this guy. But then as it goes on, you realize how serious and like sad his life is,
Yep.
and how good he
Um.
is.
So yeah. That's kind of we that's what we said though is like Atis wouldn't have allowed it to be anyone but him, which is fine. And Sarah's like her heart super heavy because she knows that Rena's right. Atis would have could have stepped back and allowed Ash to finish kin, but he hadn't. Um so she's like really it's hurting her heart because knowing that he killed his own brother and a twin at that, it was just a lot. Um she knew that this was something Atis may never truly get past, even if his twin was a grade A asshole. Because Colas didn't. His grief and shame over killing Ethos had aided him in becoming what he had become, essentially, which, you know, Atis is gonna take a snooze. So it'll be fine. It'll be
You
fine.
know,
He'll take a
sometimes you
snooze.
just need a nap to make everything better. For
Their
heaven's
naps
ears.
are yeah, I was gonna say their naps are a little longer, but this, you know.
Yeah, live long enough to really get past everything, and it's fine. Everything's moved on.
Yeah, and then Rain's like, Sarah, are you feeling unwell? And she's like, why do you ask? And he says, you're holding your stomach. And she was like, yeah. And then Rain started to ask if she was pregnant, but then he stopped himself
And realize that's a
and
rude question to ask.
yeah, and Sarah's like, oh shit, was he about to ask if I was pregnant? And she's like, well, we'd have to tell everyone sooner or later. I knew they would be happy, even Rain, who I imagined would probably be more of a nervous wreck than me. But they decided that they would tell everyone once Colas was dealt with, and it would be something to celebrate. We just had to get to that point. And then Sarah stops in to check on Layla again, and Atis was sitting next to Layla as she's sleeping, kind of just, you know, watching over her because, well, it's Layla and Atis, and that's just how they do, respectfully.
Mhm.
So then she goes downstairs, and the, you know, guards are bowing because, well, she loves that. And she's just like, that's not necessary. And Rahar's there too, and he's just like, it's charming how you keep telling them not to bow. And she goes, at some point, I'm hoping they'll listen. And Rahar goes, or at some point you will accept how they choose to show you respect. And Ash chimes in, he's like, it is unlikely either thing will happen. And, well,
Just, yeah.
this is accurate. So then he's like, Rahar, can you give us a minute? And he tells Sarah that he was at the pillars, and she was like, I figured. And then they have this back and forth about breakfast and nausea and life. And then he
Love
asks if
that.
she checked on Eos and Layla, and she says that they're both asleep. And so essentially she's ready to summon a fate so that we can get the others here. And Ash is like, I'm ready when you are. So she goes, Fates, I request a meeting with one of you. Please. And Ash is like, the please was a nice touch. And then he's like, you started to turn golden when you summoned the fate. It was hot. And he's like, I haven't seen you go full primal yet. You were close to doing so when we were in the class to Isles. And she says, I think I may have done it when I was in Lasagna, but I really don't know what I look like besides my skin kind of turning gold. And he goes, I'm sure you were beautiful.
And he would have gotten hard just looking at it, because that's what these men do.
And that's also true. And then shortly after that, Rain, the cousins, and finally Attis joined them. There was no fit among them, but the latter entered with wet hair and his features drawn into tight, somber lines. He dropped onto the settee across from me with a nod. I started to ask how he was, but stopped myself as Rain busied himself pouring drinks for everyone. I knew that I didn't like to be asked about my feelings, especially these kinds, particularly in front of others. Well, look at her having self-awareness. Reading the
Attie.
room, as some would say. So Rain makes a comment about how he thinks Eos will wake soon, and that she was starting to move when he left. And Ash asked if there are any updates on Kin's armies, and Attis says, when I went back early this morning, I was informed that about 10,000 surrendered, but their newfound loyalty to me isn't something I'm willing to trust in battle yet. And Ash is like, understandable. And about
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
10,000 fell in battle. And roughly 20,000 are likely fleeing to wherever Colas is. So, and then Sarah starts to say that's disappointing, and then she senses an ancient. And Ash is like, what is it? And she says, I think the Fate is here. And then there's a knock at the door, and Sarah goes, well, we know it's not Aiden since they actually knocked. And she opens the door.
True.
And it's Holland.
Oh, yay!
And he goes, Sarah, and Sarah jerks forward, crossing the antechamber and stopping in front of Holland, and a lump forms in her throat as they continued to stare at each other. And then, without saying a word, Holland lifted his arms, and she threw himself at him, and this was so cute. And then Attis chimes in on the back going, well, that's not something you see every day. And Holland goes, I don't think you've ever greeted me in such a manner to Sarah. Not since you were a child. I wasn't expecting that after. And then she's kind of just soaking him in. And then she starts apologizing profusely. And he's like, I know, Sarah, I know. And she's like, do you forgive me? And like, I love that she like cares about his opinion like so deeply. And it's not even like, I don't like because he's a Fate. It's because he is Holland. And
Yeah.
it's like, obviously I attribute it to Poppy and Victor. Like,
Yeah,
it's just like,
definitely. Look at them both having these like father figures that are way more important in the like
Grand
way
scheme.
things are.
No, yeah.
And they
100%.
know.
And then she's like, do you forgive me? And Holland was like, oh, Sarah, it is not my forgiveness you need, but you have it. And he then turns to Ash and says, it's good to see you. And Ash is like, same, but he's saying it in a very like stoic, not impressed voice. And Sarah's just like, Ash, like, why are you the way that you are? And Holland goes, it's okay. He has a right to be wary of my presence. And then he said hello to everyone else. And Attis goes, I don't believe we met. And Holland goes, we have not, but that is a good thing, is it not? And Attis just snorts at that comment.
Oh boy.
And then they're kind of just catching up, asking like, you know, how she's feeling and doing with all her abilities and all that shit. And Attis is like, so I'm gonna hazard a guess here and say you two know each other. And Holland chimes in and says, I've known Seraphina since she was a child. I trained her. And Attis is like, you acted as her victor then. Didn't know the array were allowed to get so hands-on. And Holland says, there is much we're able to do, as you are well aware.
Oh.
So then it's just like, he asks like why he was summoned. And, Ash goes, we appreciate the fact that you knocked. The last one didn't. And Holland already knows that they're talking about Aiden. And that's hilarious. And Sarah goes, we wanted to set up a meeting with Colas. And so he's asking for the details. And he asks for the reason for the meeting. But he says, and the reason you want to give for the meeting. And Sarah caught on to what he was asking, knowing like what to say in order for Colas to believe. And she was like, we would like to make a truce. And Holland is like, huh, is that so? And she says, if he agrees to meet with us, I'm willing to give him what he wants in exchange for coming to an agreement. And Holland goes, and do you request a Fate to moderate such a meeting? And Ash says no. And Holland goes, without a Fate present, there is no guarantee of nonviolence. And like Loki, we're
The
all like,
point.
we know, bud, we know. And Holland's like, is that all? And then she nods, and Holland says, I will go to him immediately. I can't say how long it will take before he agrees. And Sarah's just confidently saying he'll agree. And Holland goes, if you are speaking of Satoria's soul, he will. And she's like, I wish you could stay, but I know you can't. And Holland's like, as do I. And then Ash goes, before you leave, I do have a question about Aiden. He knew we had entered an Irini before, but made no mention of that. Seems odd that he wouldn't have reminded Sarah, especially considering she just rose as the primal of life. And Holland grimaces, sure. And says, I wish I could say for certain why Aiden failed to mention it, but he should have. I am sorry he didn't.
Sus.
Interesting. And Sarah's like, will you get in trouble for answering those summons considering the history? And Holland goes, some weren't pleased, but the universe essentially wouldn't have allowed me to if, there was going to be an issue. And that also boggles their heads. They're just like, it's crazy that like essentially the Force is
It's so weird to
is
know,
like controlling how the universe goes. What?
it's just like, I'm gonna do this thing, and there's just like this air of like, no, you're not, and it's that's so weird, so weird.
Yeah, it's a crazy concept to kind of just fathom at that point. And Ash also kind of says that we know the only way Colas ever had knowledge of the star was because a fate told him about it. Of course, it could have been done as it was suggested. And so Sarah's having this whole Delphi mentioned that Colas might have used someone the fate loved to manipulate them into giving him what he wanted. That would be on par with Colas's past behavior. But Ash was right. How the fates / the ancients intervened often made no sense. And now we knew they wanted to wake the ancients. Clearly, not all of them wanted that, but why would any of them want to do that? And that's what Ash was trying to get at with his question to Holland. And Sarah goes, we know why some of the fates have been intervening. They want the ancients to wake up. And Holland's just like, that is a question I cannot answer. And not because I know the answer and cannot say, but because I don't. And Ash is like, it wasn't a question. And Holland is like, you're right. And then they get into hypotheticals like, say someone out there wants the ancients to wake. Why? Because they want to see their realms destroyed.
I love when it goes, so theoretically speaking, or just
foreshadowing,
shits and giggles.
It's really just a foreshadow at this point. Theoretically, some could view the awakening as inevitable and seek to control it. Some could believe it is the only way to save the realms. And Ash is just like, why would anyone theoretically think that? And Holland is just like, perhaps those who have been in a deep sleep have lost some of their bitterness. It's hard to tell if that would be the case, but it's not impossible. And if not, theoretically, there could be a few who would want to see their reawakening, or who see the reawakening as a restart. And Ash is just like, you mean a purge? Oh, I didn't know we were getting into Blumhouse here. One where the numbers of mortals and even the gods are greatly reduced and far more manageable to be controlled, which is kind of just manipulative and sus as heck. And Ash goes by the ancients themselves, so it's possible that some of the fates want to return to the way that it was. And Ash still doesn't know that the fates are ancients, which is wild, but essentially Holland's like, yes.
Again, the Force told her not to tell him.
The Force is strong with her. I honestly did not mean to say it like that, but I did anyway. And then they're having this conversation, and Rain is just like, how would awakening the ancients like cost the realms less? They're beings of absolute power. And Sarah's like, an absolute power corrupts just as it did before. And Holland's like, but those who do not seek power remain uncorrupted by it. And it's like, Ash is like, is it really that simple? Holland says yes, but I don't think it's that simple. I think that absolute, power just is not. Maybe it's just my foregone conclusion about having power and the need for more power.
Right.
I don't know. And there was another question. Oh, then they're talking about Sarah's like corruption of power in terms of her being the primal of life, and they're just like, she's not going to get corrupted by power. And Ash was looking at her because she's just like, power has corrupted me. And Holland says, what you did in Lysania was not due to any corruption of power. It was pain, pure and simple. I do not fear corruption from you because you do not want power. You never have. She's like, true, you right. Slay, slay, queen slay. Then she's,
Exactly like that.
questioning her being well suited for the role kind of vibe. And Sarah asks, is her bloodline special? And Holland goes, your bloodline was chosen. Dun dun dun. And so Sarah asks if he would risk waking the ancients to risk everything Colas has wrought upon the realms. And Holland's like, I think you know the answer to that. And she says, I did, or at least I hope I did, and that he believed it was too much of a risk, but I didn't tell him about our plan for Cisoria. I also hadn't told him I was pregnant. Of course, he could have already been aware of that, but a tiny part of me doubted I understood what Holland truly wanted, because he, too, had intervened in ways. And then talks of ancients are, concerning, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, but the fact that he says, but it's not your problem, not yet. Oh.
Yeah, that's because that's the next book's problem, not our
But it's
current
like,
book's problem.
June needs to come faster.
Yeah, it won't. And Sarah's just like, I know you walk a fine line when it comes to interfering, but I don't want you anywhere near that line. You shouldn't even be here. And he's like, it's fine, but I shouldn't linger much longer. And then they come to the realization that they won't be able to spend much time together after this. So she gets all sad, and he gets sad. And he goes, I should be on my way to speak with Colas. I am very proud of you, Sarah, truly. And then he looks at Ash and goes, and you, your father is proud of you. And Ash is like, is? And Holland goes, Ethos has returned to be at Mycella's side. And he goes, oh. And then he's like, how is that possible? Colas destroyed her soul, ushering in her final death. And Holland says he attempted to, and in a way he succeeded, but a fate intervened. And Sarah goes, oh my gods. And he's like, and Ash says, I don't understand. Ati says, neither do I. And Holland says, it is rare for a fate to intervene in such a way, but your father was well liked by many of them, your mother even more. Perhaps one day I will be able to tell you about how it was made possible.
Oh.
And Sarah says, as I felt Ash's heart pound against my palm, I thought I knew what such an act had brought upon the unknown fate, their own destruction.
Can you imagine
I
being
feel like that's in
Ash?
No, but I also feel like it happens in Fall of Wrath and Ruin, or like that series. I feel like
We need to read
that.
that.
I know, we gotta read a lot of
But
things,
just like
dude.
for Ash to realize that his mother's soul wasn't destroyed and his parents are together, like,
And
oh,
like all of this shit's going down, and he's just like, he's ushered in he's accepted his doom, his sadness. I don't fucking know. It's
but
fine.
that's probably some really great closure for him because he thought like his mother was like long gone and like, but now he knows they're in Arcadia and he'll be able to see them when he goes there. Like, oh, yeah, we need to read that book. Anyways,
True. So chapter 59, they are done with their meeting or whatever. Holland hadn't returned by later that night, so she kind of just kept telling herself that she didn't need to be worried about that. Ash had left after dinner to check in with Theon, and she'd felt him return a bit ago, but he hadn't come back to their room. And she was worried, obviously, because learning that your mother's soul wasn't completely destroyed was good news, but it was also a lot to take in and to process. And he's been quiet ever since Holland left, which honestly, mood, girl, like he
yeah,
has shit to figure out. So then Sarah went to go check on Layla. Eos had awakened that afternoon and immediately went to go to Catheria to inspect its current or wanted to go to Catheria to check its current state, but it wasn't safe yet. So then she went to Serta. And Sarah was just like, I don't want her to go there either, but Belle will keep her protected. I love that they're,
baby primals.
that they're them.
Yeah.
And so Atis is still in Layla's room. Well, I guess back in Layla's room. And he looked like he was sleeping. So Sarah goes to leave, and Atis is like, you're not going to say hello. And she's like, I thought you were sleeping. And he was like, nah, I'm just meditating. Never tried it before. Um, and she's like, how's that going for you? And he says, not particularly well. The whiskey I tried to take from your husband's office would have probably helped, but instead I was lectured by a primal significantly younger than me that the last thing I needed was to drink myself into a stupor. Valid. And she's like, have you slept at all? And he says, yeah. Have you eaten? And he's like, I'm fine, Sarah. And she's like, no, you're not. I don't expect you to be. No one would. And he says, you sound like Nyktos. And then she apologizes, and he says, so am I. And then they go to the silence, and he says, it's not like I didn't know what he had become. or that I held on to any hope that he could be saved. I accepted he couldn't. Knew the kin I grew up with and loved was long gone, but you know what I saw in the seconds before I ended him? And she says, what? And he says, I saw the kin who sat beside me after my children were killed, who was there for me when I felt like my world had been destroyed. That's the kin I keep seeing. And then
Hmm.
Sarah goes, maybe that's the kin you should remember and mourn. And he's like, is that right? Like, after everything he's done? And he's like, he was still your brother and you still had good times with him. How he turned out doesn't erase who he was. And he's like, you really believe the shit you're saying? And she's like, well, not for me. I only knew him as the asshole he was. But regarding you and what you know, yeah, I believe it.
See, that's what I was saying. Like, we hate Ken because of how we know him. Addis knew him differently.
And that's fine. And Addie's is like, so I'm assuming your fate hasn't returned yet. And she says no. And Atty says Phanos will try to talk Colas out of it, so will Varys. But Colas won't listen to them. He will agree. Sotoria is his weakness. He'll risk anything while ignoring common sense and every red flag to get to her. And Sarah says, if Sotoria chooses to be reborn, will you still go into stasis? And he says, yes, I have to. If I don't, I wouldn't be in a good headspace to even be around her. If she retains her memories, I wouldn't be the Attis she remembers. And that's the last thing she'd need. And if she chooses to be reborn, I want her life to be happy, to be good. She deserves that.
Oh, I can't wait for her to meet Addis.
And she says, but you love her. And Atty says, and that is why I will be in stasis. And Sarah, and this whole thing says, heart twisting, I drew in a breath that stung. To give up the possibility of being with someone just to make sure that there was no chance you would disappoint or cause them harm, and he would be giving up that opportunity. I doubted a mortal's lifespan was enough time in stasis for it to be of any real help. That was true love. And then
Oh,
she
man.
asks Attis, do you love Layla? And he goes, do you think it's possible to love two people at the same time? And she says, I think it's possible. I think it depends on the person. Not everyone would be able to, but some could and probably do. And Attis says, I agree with that. And she's like, that wasn't an answer, but it also was. So then she leaves Attis after this whole lovely, beautiful talk that they had. And she goes to find Ash. And he's thinking, and he asks if Layla's awake yet, and Sarah says no, but I imagine she will be soon. And then she kind of recaps the whole Attis interaction. And she's like, well, what are you thinking about? And he says, our children. And she was like, I wasn't expecting that answer. And he says, I really wasn't expecting to be thinking about that myself. It didn't start off that way when I wandered in here. I was thinking about my mother and how she is now with my father, and I still can't believe it. I didn't know the Fates could do something like that. Obviously, I forgot how powerful they are. And Sarah's inner monologue is, if only he knew. And she says, learning about your mom is a lot to process. And he says, it is. Don't get me wrong. I'm so goddamn relieved. It's just that I spent my entire life believing that she was really gone and that I wouldn't even get to see her when I finally entered Arcadia. It's like having to rework my brain. It'll take a while.
Oh, I know that feeling.
And he says, and while I was in here, I started to think about how I never got to witness both of them in here, see them sit on their thrones. I only saw my father. When I was old enough, I was allowed to watch any meetings he had with other gods or people who came from Lethe, whatever. As we waited for those meetings to begin, I would crawl over all over the benches, run from one to the other, crawl under them. Only the Fates know why. Ethon was younger then too, not as young as Reaver, but small enough that he could easily move through the rooms with me. And then she like has this feeling that their sons would be the spitting image of him as a child. And she's like, our sons. And she's like, look at me, thinking as if I knew for sure that they would be boys, but I kind of felt like I did know for sure. I grinned as I pressed my cheek to his chest. And then he continues saying, anyways, I got to thinking about our children and how they will one day be doing the same thing, maybe in this throne room or perhaps wherever we decide to stay when this is over. Except there will be two of them and Jadis and Reaver to chase after them. And there will be us. We will be sitting in those thrones watching them. And she says, Ash, and he says, I love what I feel from you right now. It is everything. And she says, you are everything. And sexy time for a few pages. It kind of spreads itself out. Euphemism not intended, but it's all good. And then they talk about her being nervous about facing Colas, and Sarah's like, I'm surprised you haven't sensed any of my anxiety. And he's like, I guess you're just getting better at shielding. And he says it's okay to be nervous. And she's like, I know. And then he says, and scared. And then she says, I'm not scared. I mean, I'm not scared of seeing Colas. I don't fear him anymore. I fear losing people we care about, and I fear failing. I wish I could promise that we won't lose anyone else, but I can't. I can't promise we will not fail. We will trap and entomb the bastards. We will give Satoria her choice. We will ensure that Elysium and the mortal realm are taken care of, and we will have a near eternity of moments like this. You and me, our children chasing each other around the throne room. We will get to watch them grow and find love. We'll become grandparents, and then we will watch them grow. After all the while, Colas will be where we put him, and he will stay there. That's what Ash said in response to her fear of failing. And she says, that sounds beautiful and perfect. And he says, it will be beautiful. It will be a beautiful and perfect reality, Eliasa. And then she's like, but would it be reality? My heart skipped as I shut down those thoughts and tipped toward kissing Ash. We would make this our reality. We had to.
Dun, dun, dun.
Wild, dude. Wild. And let me tell you, I've already done the notes for this next episode. I'm like, the next episode is going to be a lot of wabam.
Yeah.
And then the final episode will be like a stab to the heart, twist the knife, cry.
And then talk all the theories.
Yeah. Oh. So I gotta say is,
Ugh.
but sipping and bitching on everything. Do it. Do all the things. We have, I don't know, chat with us. Do stuff. I don't remember what I even say anymore.
We might be making changes to how we do stuff. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We will be releasing this episode. Well, when you're listening to this, it'll be Wednesday. We had an episode drop last week, and then we might do a 2 for this week. We might do a 2 for next week in terms of episode drops, but everything will be done before Thanksgiving. So go us. We did it.
Perfect time to take a little breaky break for the holidays.
Oh, yes, because
Figure
we
out what we're
deserve
going to
it.
talk about next, because we're going to need a break after doing this whole series and then having nothing.
Just our hearts and our... Yeah, we need to recover.
If you check our socials, Steph got a special copy of the From Blood and Ash series. It's super pretty.
Oh, if you're on YouTube, you can see it right there.
Yep. But we put like a unboxing video from when I was there with her.
Yep. And it's on TikTok is the full version. Instagram has like a Cliff Notes abridged version because they have a limit. And well, I did try my best. But yeah, sipping and bitching on everything. Go check it out. Do the things like comment, rate, share with your friends. It's gonna be a good time. I don't know what we're gonna do after this, so this is exciting.
If you have any thoughts for what you want us to cover, let us know.
Exactly. And with that, we will catch you later, bitches. Bye.
Bye.